What happens when two of music's biggest stars clash live on television in front of millions of viewers? When years of buried resentment suddenly explode into the most uncomfortable interview ever recorded. You're about to witness the moment. Justin Timberlake stormed off the Clarkson show after a conversation that started friendly but quickly turned into a brutal confrontation that left everyone in the studio speechless. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment because this story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about these two superstars. The cameras were rolling as Clarkson flashed her signature warm smile toward her guest. The studio audience buzzed with excitement, completely unaware they were about to witness television history. Justin Timberlake sat comfortably in the plush interview chair, his usual confident demeanor on full display as he adjusted his jacket and returned Kelly's welcoming grin. "Justin, welcome back to the show," Kelly began, her voice carrying that familiar mix of professionalism and genuine warmth that had made her such a beloved talk show host. "It's always such a pleasure having you here. Your fans are absolutely going crazy on social media knowing you're here today." Justin leaned back slightly, his hands clasped together as he nodded appreciatively. "Thanks for having me, Kelly. It's great to be back. Your show has this incredible energy that I just love being part of. The audience here is always so amazing." The conversation flowed smoothly at first, covering the usual territory of current projects and upcoming tours. Kelly's questions were thoughtful, giving Justin plenty of room to share anecdotes and connect with the audience. But then something shifted in Kelly's tone, a subtle change that only the most observant viewers might have caught. "You know, Justin, I've been thinking a lot about the music industry lately," Kelly said, her smile remaining but her eyes taking on a more serious quality. "About how we support each other, especially during difficult times, how we show up for one another when it really matters." Justin's expression flickered for just a moment, a brief shadow crossing his features before he recovered his composure. "Absolutely, Kelly. The music community is like a family. We all go through ups and downs, and having that support system is crucial." "That's interesting you say that," Kelly continued, her voice maintaining its pleasant tone even as her words carried an unmistakable edge. "Because I remember going through some pretty challenging times myself, and I was always curious about where that family support was when I needed it most." The studio audience began to sense the shift in atmosphere, the comfortable chatter dying down as people leaned forward in their seats. Justin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, his hands now gripping the armrests of his chair just a little too firmly. "Kelly, I'm not sure I follow what you're getting at," Justin replied, his voice carefully controlled, but with a hint of tension creeping in. "We all deal with our struggles in different ways. Sometimes the best support is giving someone space to work through things." Kelly let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Space, that's one way to put it, I suppose. Though I always thought support looked more like showing up, reaching out, being present. But maybe that's just me. I think we all have different perspectives on friendship and support," Justin said, his tone becoming more defensive despite his efforts to remain diplomatic. "What matters is that we're all here now, we've all grown, and we can move forward." "Move forward," Kelly repeated, nodding slowly as if considering the phrase. "That's a beautiful sentiment, Justin, really beautiful, but sometimes I wonder if moving forward is just code for pretending the past never happened. For acting like certain choices and certain silences don't have consequences." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Camera operators exchanged glances, and the production team behind the scenes scrambled to figure out if they should intervene. Justin's famous charm was beginning to crack under the pressure of Kelly's relentless but professionally delivered assault. "Kelly, if you have something specific you want to discuss, maybe we should talk about it privately," Justin suggested, his voice tight with barely contained frustration. "This doesn't seem like the right venue for whatever this is." "Oh, but I think this is exactly the right venue," Kelly replied, her smile never wavering, even as her words cut deeper. "After all, this is where we come to share our truth, isn't it? To be authentic with our audiences, to show them who we really are." Justin shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his carefully maintained public persona beginning to slip away piece by piece. The audience watched in stunned silence as two beloved figures engaged in what was clearly more than just a casual interview gone slightly off track. "Authenticity is important," Justin managed, his voice strained, "but so is respect. So is understanding that some conversations belong in private spaces, not on national television." "Respect," Kelly echoed thoughtfully. "Now there's a word I haven't heard from you in a very long time, Justin. It's funny how we suddenly care about respect when the spotlight is on us, when our carefully crafted images are at stake." The word hung in the air like a challenge, and Justin's composure finally began to crumble. His hands moved restlessly as he processed Kelly's pointed remarks. The carefully rehearsed media training that had served him so well over the years, suddenly feeling inadequate for this moment. "Kelly, I think you're misremembering some things," Justin said, his voice taking on a sharper edge that the audience had never heard from him before. We all make choices about how we handle difficult situations. That doesn't make us bad people. Misremembering, Kelly repeated slowly, savoring each syllable as if it were poison. That's an interesting way to describe having a perfect recollection of being completely abandoned when my world was falling apart. When every tabloid was tearing me apart and I was struggling just to get through each day. The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath as they continued rolling, unsure whether they were capturing a career-defining moment or a career-ending disaster. Justin's face flushed slightly, his jaw working as he struggled to find the right words. I never abandoned anyone, Justin protested, leaning forward in his chair. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is not add to the chaos. Sometimes, staying quiet is an act of kindness, not neglect. Kelly's laugh was bitter this time, all pretense of her usual warmth evaporating completely. Staying quiet, is that what we're calling it? Because from where I was sitting, it looked a lot more like protecting your own reputation while watching someone else get destroyed. That's not fair, Kelly, and you know it, Justin shot back, his voice rising for the first time since the interview began. You're painting a picture that isn't accurate. I had my own challenges to deal with. I had my own career to protect. There it is, Kelly said triumphantly, pointing at him as if she had just proven her point. Your career, your image, your reputation. It's always been about you, hasn't it, Justin? Even when someone you claimed to care about was drowning, it was still all about protecting Justin Timberlake. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was beyond anything they had ever witnessed on daytime television. The usual, polite applause and scripted banter had been replaced by raw, unfiltered emotion that felt too intimate and too painful for public consumption. You don't know what you're talking about, Justin said through gritted teeth. You have no idea what I was going through or what decisions I had to make. It's easy to judge from your perspective, but you weren't in my shoes. No, I wasn't in your shoes, Kelly agreed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I was in my own shoes, dealing with my own pain. While someone I thought was a friend decided that silence was the safer option. While someone I trusted chose their PR team's advice over basic human decency. Justin's face was now visibly red, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The charm and charisma that had made him a global superstar had completely vanished, replaced by something raw and defensive that his fans had never seen before. This is ridiculous, Justin snapped. You're turning this into something it never was. We were never that close. Kelly, let's be honest about that. At least we were colleagues. We were friendly, but this narrative you're creating about deep friendship and betrayal, it's just not reality. The words hit Kelly like a physical blow, and for the first time since the confrontation began, her composure wavered. Her eyes flashed with genuine hurt before hardening into something far more dangerous. Colleagues, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow more menacing than when she had been speaking loudly. Friendly colleagues. Is that how you remember those late-night phone calls? Those conversations about our fears and dreams? Those moments when we shared things we had never told anyone else? Justin opened his mouth to respond, but Kelly wasn't finished. Her voice grew stronger with each word, years of suppressed anger finally finding their voice. Is that how you remember telling me about your struggles with anxiety? About your fears, that you weren't good enough? About how terrified you were that people would see through the image and realize you were just as insecure as everyone else? Because I remember those conversations, Justin. I remember being there for you when you needed someone to listen. The studio was now completely silent except for the hum of the cameras and the barely audible breathing of the audience members, who found themselves unwilling witnesses to this brutal emotional excavation. Justin's face had gone pale, his earlier anger replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like panic. Kelly, please, he said, his voice much quieter now but still strained. This isn't the place for this. You're right, we did share things, we did have a connection, but that doesn't mean I owed you anything when your situation got complicated. Complicated, Kelly repeated, shaking her head in disbelief. My life being torn apart by the media was complicated. My reputation being destroyed was complicated. My mental health suffering was complicated. But apparently your response was simple. Disappear and pretend none of it was happening. I never pretended anything wasn't happening, Justin insisted, but his voice lacked conviction now. I couldn't get involved. It would have made things worse for both of us. Worse for both of us, Kelly said, nodding as if finally understanding something important. The sudden movement sent shockwaves through the studio as Justin towered over Kelly, his chest rising and falling rapidly as he struggled to regain control of the situation that had spiraled completely beyond his ability to manage. Kelly remained seated, looking up at him with a mixture of satisfaction and genuine hurt that made the moment even more uncomfortable for everyone watching. Sit down, Justin, Kelly said calmly, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to surprise even her. We're not finished here. After years of silence, after years of pretending this conversation never needed to happen, we're going to finish it now. No, Justin said firmly, shaking his head as he took a step back from his chair. No, Kelly, we're not doing this. This ambush, this public humiliation, whatever you want to call it, it ends now. I came here to promote my work, not to be attacked. On national television, attacked, Kelly repeated, her eyebrows rising in mock surprise. Is that what you call being held accountable? Is that what you call finally having to face the consequences of your choices? Because from where I'm sitting, this feels like the first honest conversation we've had in years. The audience was completely transfixed, their heads turning back and forth between the two stars as if they were watching a tennis match played with words instead of balls. The tension in the room was so thick it felt suffocating, and several audience members had their phones out, recording what they instinctively knew was a moment that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Honest conversation, Justin scoffed, his voice bitter with frustration. This isn't honest, Kelly, this is calculated. This is you using your platform to settle old scores while I'm trapped here with nowhere to go. This is you taking advantage of the fact that I can't defend myself without looking even worse. Oh, you can defend yourself, Kelly shot back, her own voice rising to match his energy. In fact, I'm begging you to defend yourself. Tell me why you disappeared. Tell me why someone who claimed to care about me vanished the moment things got difficult. Tell me why your friendship came with conditions I was never told about. Justin ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that made him look younger and more vulnerable than he had appeared in years. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter but filled with a raw honesty that seemed to surprise even him. Because I was scared, okay? Because I was terrified that associating with you during that time would destroy everything I had worked for. Because my team told me that getting involved would be career suicide, and I listened to them instead of listening to my conscience. The admission hung in the air like a confession at trial, and Kelly's expression softened slightly, as if she hadn't expected him to actually tell the truth. But her moment of sympathy was brief, replaced quickly by renewed anger. So you admit it, she said, leaning forward in her chair. You admit that you chose your career over our friendship. You admit that when I needed you most, you calculated the cost of helping me and decided I wasn't worth the risk. That's not how it was, Justin protested, but his voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. It wasn't that simple. It wasn't just about my career. It was about protecting my family, my future, everything I had built. Everything you had built, Kelly repeated slowly. And what about everything I had built? Justin, what about my career, my reputation, my future? Did any of that factor into your calculations, or was I just collateral damage in the preservation of your empire? Justin's face crumpled slightly, the weight of years of guilt and rationalization finally becoming too much to bear. He looked around the studio as if seeing it clearly for the first time, taking in the cameras, the audience, the lights, all the elements that had trapped him in this moment of reckoning. I made mistakes, he said quietly. I made choices I'm not proud of. But dragging me through this publicly isn't going to change any of that. It's just going to hurt both of us more than we've already been hurt. Both of us again, Kelly said, shaking her head in amazement. Even now, even in your apology, you're making this about both of us. You're making your guilt equivalent to my pain. You're making your regret equal to my years of wondering why someone I trusted abandoned me when I needed them most. The words seemed to break something inside Justin. His shoulders sagged, his carefully maintained posture crumbling as the full weight of what Kelly was saying finally hit him. When he looked at her again, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're right, he whispered, his voice barely audible. You're absolutely right. I failed you. I failed as a friend, as a human being, as someone who claimed to care about you. I let fear and selfishness guide my decisions, and you paid the price for my cowardice. Kelly's own eyes began to fill with tears, but her voice remained steady. That's all I wanted to hear, Justin. That's all I've wanted to hear for years. Not excuses, not justifications, just acknowledgement that what you did was wrong, and that it hurt me. For a moment, it seemed like the confrontation might end in reconciliation, that years of pain and anger might finally be healed through this brutal but necessary conversation. But then Justin's expression hardened again, as if he suddenly remembered where he was and what was happening. But this, he said, gesturing around the studio, this public trial, this humiliation, this isn't the way to heal anything. Kelly, this is just revenge dressed up as justice. This is you using your pain as a weapon to destroy me the way you felt destroyed. The accusation hit Kelly like a slap, and her brief moment of softness vanished completely. She stood up from her chair now too, facing Justin across the small space that suddenly felt like a chasm. Don't you dare, she said, her voice shaking with rage. Don't you dare turn this around and make me the villain. I gave you years to reach out, years to make this right privately. I waited for an apology.